So this song was inspired by my optimism about moving to New York. Back in 2015, when I first moved, I had a gut feeling that I would fall in love with the city and the people there. And while I felt a great deal of anxiety and uncertainty, I was certainly optimistic to say the least. So a few months after moving to New York, I wrote this tune. The original intended purpose of this song was to be played in one of the ensembles I was in at NYU, which was led by the legendary Joe Lovano. It was a pretty large ensemble, so I used the arrangement to feature Joe, with the rest of the band kind of playing chord hits behind him. The arrangement eventually evolved into what you hear on the album, which is sextet with alto taking the melody, tenor counterlines, and vibes doubling the melody. So the first thing I wrote was this bass figure. So pretty standard contemporary jazz bass figure, but quite difficult to play, especially this part. Which, interestingly enough, is actually a spread D-diminished triad. There's definitely a lot of Jeff Keezer influence in this tune, but also a lot of Mulgrew Miller influence. Mulgrew was big on writing tunes that kind of danced around different key centers. Tunes like Day to Day, Farewell to Dogma, and The Sequel. With The Prospect of Love, we have an A section that starts off in D-flat major but makes its way to G major, and it sounds like this. So backing up a bit, we start off with a pretty typical major key progression. What is essentially a spiced up 1 chord, followed by a 4 chord with a tritone sub leading into it. Then followed by what we might consider to be a 5 of 6 chord, this B flat 7. What I mean by that is, hearing this chord in the context of this key, you might expect it to resolve down a 5th to E flat minor, but instead we get this. So what's happening here is the melody actually suggests E flat minor, but the chords tell a different story. Here's that same melody against just an E flat minor chord. But with the reharm, it sounds like this. In either case, this E flat note we hit on the pickup into the 6th measure helps pivot us into G major. Then we go to the 4 of G, C major. The melody is pretty typical, something you might find in a jazz standard, but again, the harmony tells a different story. At first, everything seems normal. This B flat diminished chord kind of sounds like that sharp 4 chord we're used to hearing. But there's an unexpected turn, and instead we go here. So we end on this C7 sharp 11 chord. That gives us just that little bit of uncertainty before we go back into the 2nd A. Now the second time through the A section and the head out on the bridge, we kind of accent the harmony with these written out bass lines. So the bridge doesn't really lean towards any one key in particular. This was a section I wrote almost entirely by ear, thinking more about the sound of each chord on its own rather than how it moved to the next chord. My hope was that I could present a strong enough melody that it would kind of carry us from chord to chord and be the main source of momentum in this tune. That, along with good voice leading and interconnecting lines, will help kind of bind the whole thing together. The melody at the end of the bridge gives us a nice lead-in to the last A, but the harmony gives us a less straightforward resolution, an F7 flat 9 chord, as opposed to, say, an A flat 7 chord. This is just me playing with the idea of a resolution and trying to find more interesting ways of leading back into the tonic. Then we go to the last A, but this time instead of modulating to G major, we kind of stay in D flat major, punctuating the end of the phrase with this feel-good kind of melody. And that leads right back into the original vamp, but this time with a different melody. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos. And as always, happy practicing.